Jackie, you're in San Francisco.
Yes.
So you took over your business from your father. Is he still around?
Nope. Dad died. Both mom and dad are gone. Dad died about 8 years ago, 2016. And mom died about 4 years ago, maybe three now. And dad ran the outside, mom ran the inside. So that's why I bring up mom.
Oh, okay. Got it.
Yeah.
Outside, you mean
On
the
the field.
outside business, and mom was involved in the business
Correct. They
and ran
both.
operations. Got
Yep.
it.
I think she was 49%. He was 51%.
Okay.
And my dad was grew up on a tobacco farm in Kentucky, went to the eighth grade, dropped out of school to help his mom on the farm when his dad died, rode his horse to school, dyslexic, just never really learned how to learn. And so he started a carpet cleaning business, probably in his late 20s, mid 30s, somewhere around there, and started carpet cleaning. uh, my mom spent the night one night when they were dating. She woke up in the morning. He had to run out in his van to go to a carpet cleaning job and talked her into answering the phone that day to schedule appointments for him. And that's how it started. She took over the inside and he kept running projects on the outside.
What a budding relationship.
Yeah.
He's got an immediate need. The person that's closest to him at the moment. Can you help me?
It's desperation half the time, isn't it? We know a lot about that.
Yeah, right. I mean, that's the thing is like, as we're starting any business, it's who's around me, who can
Yeah.
help because I need it,
Yeah. Yeah.
wow. And so they were in their 30s. So, wow. So how long was that business around, the carpet? And is that the business that you took
That's
over?
it today. Yeah. So the
Whoa.
business he started, carpet cleaning, is the business I have today, but we don't do carpet cleaning anymore. So we're a
Okay.
50-plus-year-old company. He started it in 1973. And so we're still here. The name has evolved over the years. We used to be Ideal Carpet and Upholstery Cleaning. And then that merged and evolved into what we call the restoration industry,
Okay.
which is water damage services for buildings. And so essentially that all when there's a leak in a building, you need to suck out the water. And so the carpet cleaners were first to kind of figure out because they have the carpet cleaning machines.
Right.
So that's how that happened. And then you realize that's more lucrative than cleaning carpets. And then eventually carpet cleaning work gets smaller, and then you're doing residential water damage work,
Hmm.
which includes sewage and mold and dirty stuff. And then that's when I got involved when we were doing residential, a lot of sewage cleanup, a lot of crawl spaces. I spent a lot of time in sewage filled crawl spaces,
Ugh.
and best way to learn. And um, today, I probably quadrupled the company in size, and we only do very large commercial work for big portfolio owners, Google's, Apple's,
Okay.
lots of big apartment companies.
In
So
nationwide or mainly in
no,
California?
only the Bay Area.
Okay. Only the Bay
Yeah,
Area. Okay.
only the Bay Area. Yeah.
So when did you start to get involved? Was it 8 years ago?
So
Was it before that?
no, I was 23, so I'm 41
Oh,
now.
okay.
So let's call it almost 20 years ago.
Okay.
And I have an older sister. Her and I were terrible children. I mean, talk about, I mean, she was worse than I was, but we were just, I mean, as a father, you've got to recognize we just don't listen to you. And the more you want to tell us how to live our life and what to do, the more we're going to go do the
Mm.
opposite. And so
Gosh.
my poor father, he just couldn't wrap his head around why these girls aren't listening to me. And my parents worked so much, they just weren't around, the latchkey kids, right?
Okay.
And so we got through high school somehow. And then, there's no pressure to go to college either.
Hmm.
They didn't go to college, so they didn't
Okay.
really give us a lot of pressure back then. And so we just kind of fumbled around after school. And I really got on the wrong track with the wrong friends, and drugs, and just kind of fell into the wrong group. And I
Okay.
finally like came out of that around 21. And my dad, I moved back home, and my dad was like, all right, well, you need a job. Let's put you in the company and you can go, like, work in the office and do something. I was just trying to like pay my bills and get
Mm,
some gas money and get my life together. And so I worked there. My dad and mom were already semi-retired, living up in Sacramento. So they
okay.
had a GM running the company, and
And
he was in a,
how old were they around that time?
they were probably at least in their early 60s,
Okay.
probably, maybe late 50s. They moved up to a retirement community.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so, they were trying to exit. They hated dealing with employees. They couldn't hack that. Culture didn't become a thing until later on, right?
Yeah.
So their mindset was like, I pay you to do a job. Why can't you do it? What's the problem here? Right. So I was just working there, just trying to pay the bills, and like, the employees then we were doing about 2 to 2.5, 3 million, somewhere around there a year. So maybe 20, 15, 20 people.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's dirty work, right? So you got a lot of the like very blue collar
Right.
field guys
High
running that work outside.
turnover. Right.
And so I would work in the office and just kind of do that. And I hated it. They hated me because I was like the spy, right? And
Oh,
so
gotcha. Yeah. Yeah.
eventually I just left. I think maybe 6 months to a year. I lasted. It was enough for me to understand what we did, because before that I was like, I don't understand, and I was pretty sure I was meant for other better things than sucking sewage out of buildings.
Mm-hmm.
So I left, and the GM fell apart. Unfortunately, you can't buy a business, and so my parents were crushed because they were on their way out. And now, what do you do?
Okay.
And they didn't have the heart to get back involved, and they didn't want to move back. They had been, separated for 5 years.
And at this
Maybe
point, they're okay. I gotcha. And
they're golfing. They've got their
yeah,
friends. I mean, they're
they're in their
retired.
mid to late 60s at this point.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And so enjoying that life. And
Mm-hmm.
so the business kind of sat vacant without a captain at the helm.
Okay.
And I would say that went on for almost a year while my dad was bringing in outside buyers.
Okay.
And my father never offered me a business. He never brought it up, never said, Jackie, would you be interested?
Mm-hmm.
Never said any of that.
Okay.
And I was always like the boy he didn't have. I was with him in the garage,
Uh-huh.
taking my bike apart, putting it back together. I'm very mechanically inclined. I kind of understand that stuff. I like hands-on stuff. I like dirty things. That was just kind of my thing. And hindsight, if he had asked me, Jackie, I want you to consider taking over the company, I probably would have been like, meh.
It's reverse psychology you.
And I can't ask him. I've been thinking about this, and I'm pissed because he's dead and I cannot ask him. But check this out. So it was Easter. My uncle, which was my mom's side, my uncle comes up to me, and I remember this moment clear as daylight.
Mm.
And here I am just floundering. I think I'm working at like a telephone company, whatever. And meanwhile, I'm like their dispatcher, and I'm reorganizing their warehouse, and I'm like putting all these processes in place. Like I grew up with two parents who were like, the dinner table was the conference table, and so I'm like making all these improvements, working so hard for a little bit of a raise, right? Getting a real taste of life.
Yeah. Right.
and and uh, and my uncle, one random Easter, he's just like, "What's wrong with you?" I'm like, "What?" He's like, here is this opportunity for you sitting on a silver platter.
Mm-hmm.
People in your position would not in your position would kill for this opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
All you have to do is reach out and grab it. And like that, I was like, oh shit.
Flip
This is
switch.
my yep. This is my livelihood. This is my future family's livelihood. I
Mm-hmm.
don't care if I'm cleaning toilets. A business is a business.
Yeah.
And your father, worked hard for this, and So I have this memory of this conversation. I never asked my uncle until recently if he remembers that. Because then I was only recently, after my dad's been gone, I was like, did he put my uncle up to that? And my uncle doesn't even remember the conversation. So I still don't know. I'll never know. But so that night I didn't say anything the rest of the day, but I was staying at my parents' house. And the next morning I walk into the kitchen. They're both sitting in the kitchen. And I said, I want to take over Ideal. I said, I'll get back in there. I'll take over the dispatch desk. Give me a year, see if I can do it. And then if I can, give me an opportunity. And I need an answer today. I like
Yeah.
said that and I felt that. And I'm like, I need to know. I need to put my 2 weeks in. And I just felt this overwhelming push.
Yeah.
And my
Wow.
dad walks around the island, doesn't say anything to my mom, only looks at her and then looks at me and says, okay, let's do it. Was it? And I moved back and I went through probably the worst years of my life. It
Here's
was terrible.
grind.
The company was in bad shape.
Okay.
They were selling drugs, they were doing side work, there was gang members working there. I mean, I just looked at that board, that schedule board. I was like, I mean, I couldn't tell what was a real job.
Were these all recurring contracts? They were just
No,
relationships your parents had
this
built?
is all, no, 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 no. This is homeowners
Yellow,
finding us in the yellow pages.
yellow pages.
So get this, like
Yeah.
if a project manager or like a lead technician on the field
Yeah.
wasn't on the up and up, they would just go out there and be like, hey, I'll do this for you for
Under the
400 bucks
table.
over the weekends.
Yeah.
And anyway, it just took me a while to figure out what was going on. And of
Yeah.
course, me being, the enemy there. And that thus started my, long, trials and
Yep.
tribulations and just
Mhm.
hard knocks school of learning. And the first person I had to fire was like a front desk person. I still remember her name is Ruby. Yeah, I had to let her go. I can't remember exactly what was going on, but her husband was in prison
Mm.
and she had 3 kids, a single mom. And here I am, a 23-year-old, having to fire this woman.
Hmm.
And I'm sitting across the desk from her, just physically shaking,
Yeah.
just trying to like, it was just- anyway. And my parents were in Sacramento, right? And my dad like tried to like advise me, and it was so hard to take advice from him because it's our parents. It's like, I got this, I got this, I got this.
Jackie the Rebel.
Yeah. But I figured it out. My dad put a consultant in there with me that I would
Okay.
listen to and
Okay.
help me out, help me figure out how to read a P&L,
Okay.
help me just figure it out. And so
Yeah.
that lasted a couple of years.
Oh,
And then I
good.
could get out of the office and I got on the field. And then the next thing was to like get me educated on the field because as a young woman in this male world, what does she know, especially being the owner's daughter? And so I just jumped into like credentialing, education, advanced
Mhm.
education. I just had to like learn it because I couldn't hire anybody because I
To
didn't
kind
know
of,
what.
and you went the credentialing to kind of bolster your worth of
Oh yeah,
sorts. Yeah. Yeah.
exactly. And I needed to figure out how to do the work
Yeah. Oh, well,
and
sure. Yeah.
why we were doing the things we were doing and be able to explain it to our customers, the homeowners. We did a little bit of commercial back then, but also the insurance companies
Yeah.
who are saying we're not paying for that. And I had to explain why they have to pay for it and why it's a health
Mhm.
hazard. And so it's not just dirty work. It's not like a plumb,
Yeah.
like suck shit, get out of the house and go. It's
Yeah.
like health and safety. And so, and I couldn't fire anybody because they knew how to do it and I didn't. And so I couldn't replace anybody and I couldn't train anybody. And so thus happened this learning journey. And eventually in 5 years, I'm the most credentialed young woman in the industry. but it gave me the confidence. I could let people go. I could rehire. I knew what people need to be trained on. I was out there training. I was running the biggest projects. I put myself on the big ones. And then eventually I moved into the sales team. And then I figured out how to sell. And then I hired a salesperson, and him and I ran around. He's still with me today.
Fantastic.
And he's amazing. And we built a commercial client business. He did most of the work. I would like guest star in the meetings and build the confidence, and we're going to be there, and I'm the owner, and I'm, exude badass, and I'll take care of you in your time of need. And so that's it. And we went up to 12 mil. Yeah.
Congrats.
Thank
What a
you. I'm
journey.
back down to 10 right now. But it's the right clients, it's the right work, and making more
Yeah.
money than we were at 12. You know how that goes.
Yeah. Fortunate. I do. EO is good at having those graphs of like this, the ebbs
Hmm.
and flows
Hmm.
of growth and ladders.
Yep. So that's
Wow.
kind of the story. And so
Yeah.
eventually, after I figured out sales team stuff, I was like, okay, now I can. And so all I did was go through these different roles in the company. I kept replacing
Mhm.
myself. And
Yeah.
then I'm like, okay, after sales, I got to figure out how to build a management team, a leadership team.
Right.
Fumbled around
Establish
with that.
loyalty within the employee base.
I mean, just fail after fail after fail. And
Yeah.
we love these expensive failures because they're the greatest lessons.
Yeah.
And now I've got a great company ran by an amazing leader, a president who's doing great. And I probably work 4 hours a week.
How long ago did you decide to bring in the outside president?
Yeah. It was 2020, 2019. It's probably just before
Okay, so
COVID.
it's been a while. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And what's funny? So I think watching my parents struggle, I always had in my head, I got to get this thing to run without me. And for some reason, and my dad calls this Kentucky math. It's like back of the napkin shit. He's not a smart man, but he sure knows his stuff, right? And I just knew if I could get this business to 10 mil, I can eke out a mil,
Hmm.
which means that I can afford a great person to run the company, and let that, not all of that, but
Yeah.
just the math made sense. If I can get to 10
Hmm.
mil, I can get somebody to run this thing for me, and it doesn't have to drain me and watch, see my what happened with my parents really just being absent too from
I was
us.
going to ask you, like, what kind of was there a particular lesson, either learned or unlearned, that you saw from your parents in operating the business? And I think you kind of answered it. You were kind of a latchkey kid, as you said. You
Yeah.
were overworking, not investing in talent, maybe the wrong client base a little bit. And
Hmm.
you just,
Hmm.
that was
Yeah.
your vision, your goal
Hmm.
to not do that.
Yep. Yep. And they just weren't around. I was a swimmer, water polo, never came to a meet. Just weren't around. They were just
That'll
busy,
leave a
and
mark.
we knew they were busy.
Mhm.
I have very clear memories that there's a billing crunch at the end of every month, and my mom had to do all this billing to close out the month.
Mhm.
And there were times I remember going to leave in the morning. I was reaching. There's one,
Yeah.
these moments you have. I was reaching for the door to leave the house to go to school and get in dad's car, and mom was coming home. And I remember as I was reaching for the door handle, it opened, and there she was, and she was just tired. She'd been invoicing all night trying to close out the month. And so, but I also got to see them on the second half enjoying
Okay.
themselves, traveling, we've got family in France, and they would take cruises
And
around the world.
and was that part when the GM started taking over?
Yes.
Interesting.
So I saw those two
Yeah.
worlds, and I saw the
Yeah.
struggle, and I saw and I know you can't afford this person. You're going to have to grind to get it to a certain size to be able to
Yeah.
afford that person. And so that was always my goal, to get it to run without me. And I knew from an early time that, even people talked about like valuing the company, and is the business sellable? And I figured out, like, if the company is sellable, it means it doesn't require me there. And then if it doesn't require me there, I then have
Mhm.
the choice to keep it or sell it. And that's where I am today. I constantly
Yeah.
get offers.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't know why I would sell it.
You've got a cash flow machine.
Yeah.
You can
I
run the
can't think it.
numbers on private equity, even though they're
Oh,
high
I
multiples.
gave them my number and they laugh at me. I said, well,
Yeah. Well,
you
and if
know,
you run your own internal numbers on cash flow over the
yeah,
next 10 plus years, you're going to make way more money by keeping it. And
exactly. And I've got a long way
that's
to
why they
go.
want to acquire you. Right. Yeah. You're young.
Yeah. I need a lot of money now. What do they call it? Lifestyle creep?
Yep. Yep.
The
Yep.
cost
Yep.
of your lifestyle just keeps going
That
up.
California lifestyle creep. Good for you. That's so awesome.
I, yeah.
There's so many great things you're mentioning here. When your mom and dad were, those early days building the business, 2 to 3 million, they were working like crazy, not able to attend the swim meets. Was it because margins were so tight, or was it because we see this within family businesses where your your family's you're paying them at a discount sometimes,
Hmm. Hmm.
and
Hmm.
it's maybe there's a hard you have a hard time delegating or
Hmm.
trusting outside
Hmm.
people, and so you kind of overwork yourselves. Do
Hmm.
you think it was a case of the delegation issue, maybe a mix of all of it?
I
You
think it was all
could
of
they have
it.
afforded the GM to not work that much, or who knows? You might not have had that much
Hmm.
insight.
Yeah. When they found the GM, it was relief. It
Okay.
was huge relief. And so I think it was about finding the right person. Um, and you know, uh, even the concept of leadership
Hmm.
wasn't, it was management to them,
Okay.
not leadership. It was like, again, I paid you to job, do it. And if you don't do it, I don't know why you're not doing it, and then they leave and then they got to jump back in. And so I don't know if loyalty was that strong. But they were very much hands-on.
Hmm.
My mom would like still, I mean, she made sure we got to school in the morning, and it was just that she couldn't just be there for everything. That's all.
Yeah. Gotcha.
But I think it
You're,
was a mix of everything. They
you're
eventually figured it out, but I don't think that they were necessarily short paying themselves.
okay.
They're,
There's necessity to work that much. Yeah.
yeah, it was growing and grinding, and my father loved it. I don't think my father was the type to go to swim meets. I think back then too. I
He's
don't
a sewer
know.
guy.
He's on the field. He's running projects.
Okay. Yeah.
He's designing equipment. He's, perfecting things around, the warehouse and the trucks. And it was his passion. It was fine.
The comment you
And
said
my
that,
mom was a good mom. She took care of the house. She was like the quintessential like mother role, fed
and
us,
that's a
was
whole nother
there,
story as well.
laundry.
The mother role has got, and many times, especially in the older generations, a double role, right? As the main parent, and then working in the business just as hard, or is so there can be a lot more pressure on the mother as well.
Yeah, well, now that I'm a month into this,
Yeah.
I have so many questions for her. I just want to know how she did it. Like, would you do when we couldn't go to school? And I remember I like being sick, and she would bring me to work with a blanket, and I would lay on the conference room table with my blanket and pillow and watch a movie on the TV
Yeah.
while she was
Right.
working. But they
Yeah.
just figured it out.
Yeah. So something your uncle said, right? The reach out and grab it. It's there
Hmm.
for you on a silver platter. There's, you know, we see, we're both entrepreneurs. We see a lot of every time we see a business, we're looking at it. What is that profit margin? What are they doing here? There's some businesses are way better than others. Some businesses are crappy, right? And sometimes when you see a good business, it's like, well, this is a very healthy, solid industry, solid business, solid prospects. Did did you kind of see that? Did your uncle kind of see that? The potential
No.
of it? He was just saying, listen, you got an operating company that's bringing in cash. Go and take it. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. And it was more like you could observe the life my parents had. We went from struggling to comfort.
Yeah.
They seem to be doing well. They seem to be able to, afford nice trips, afford nice
Mhm.
cars. They were doing very well.
So tell me about like you enter in the business. There's a staff of 20-ish people. Obviously, there's high turnover, so maybe it's not all of them were all around as much. How much pushback you felt the need to go and get credentialed, right? I mean, obviously for
Hmm.
business purposes, for insurance and stuff, but did you have pushback with some of the internal people of, hey, who's this young gun, 23, 25, 27 year old, like who's she to tell me what to do? Did you have any of that kind of pushback that you had to deal with?
Yeah, for sure. Um, but I think I worked very long hours.
Mhm.
You had to be the first one there, the last one to leave, and that lasted a very long time. And I had the energy back then. I look back, I don't know how I did that.
Yeah.
I mean, I hear that a lot from people now, 40s,
Yeah.
50s. I could not grind like that.
Dude, I'm 43. I started my firm when I was 28. I mean, I was, in your 20s, I
Yeah,
was working full time at a CPA firm. I was getting my master's in tax at night. My first company I started, I read Tim Ferriss's 4 Hour Work Week. I started renting out golf clubs nationwide, doing 30,000 a month. I was like, man,
yeah,
I've got so much energy. I was like, heck no, now 43,
yeah.
you
There's no
know,
way.
yeah, it takes an extreme
Yeah,
amount of energy,
yeah.
and passion, and I hate cliches.
Mhm.
That one that like, oh, it doesn't feel like work when you love what you do. It's like, man.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
sometimes it is
yeah.
true. Sometimes it is
It
true.
is because you don't know where the energy comes from for that,
Yeah. Yeah.
but there's a special reserve tank for that somehow.
Tell
And
me about like,
so, mhm.
what were we gonna say?
Just the in order to combat who's this woman, this girl trying to tell us what
Mhm.
to do, I just had to do more. I had to do more than them. I had to learn more than them. I had to just prove myself. And I believe that over time, that really worked in my favor. Today, there are people on the field and there's a lore. A legend. Um, the technicians pass it down. I have so much respect on the field.
Okay.
I
That's
mean,
awesome.
even my operations manager, he's just dumbfounded by it because all he knows is Jackie 4 hours a week, right? And he's like, these people think you walk on water. And Jackie cares about us. She listens to us. She's out there with us. She knows, she's if they complained about the tape that they were using, I would be out there with them on the job site, understanding what the problem was with the tape.
Yeah.
And then I go find the best fucking tape and get it in their hands and so that they could do their job as best as they could. And I got that stuff from my dad.
Ah, yep.
And so it was me really caring about them. And I think just unintentionally they picked it up and they were very loyal to me. It just took a little time.
Can you tell me like what comes to your mind, what are some of those lessons that you got from your dad? Obviously, you mentioned the dinner table. It
Yeah.
was essentially like a
Uh-huh.
conference room,
Yeah.
what are some of
Yep.
those other lessons that
Hmm.
you got from your father and mother?
Yeah. If you take care of the customer will take care of you. And it took me a while to figure that one out. But just don't fuck over your customers. Do the right thing. If you mess up, fix it. Be honest, fix it. Once you start trying to take advantage of anyone, the business is going to fail. And so that
So solid.
type of simplicity
Yeah.
is all he was like his name was Butch.
Really?
Yeah.
From Kentucky?
Total man's man. Yeah. So we call him Butchisms.
Yeah.
And he just had a bunch of them. I'll try to think of some more. I feel like
No,
wrote a list of these over the
well,
years, but
that bleeds into one of the beautiful, most powerful things about a family business that's able to kind of stay intact. It's like what you just said. Take care of your customer will take care of you. It's instilling values and ethics that if Jackie, you had been going working at AT&T
Yeah.
Global under some
Yeah.
middle manager. Would you have been able to get those family values passed
Yeah.
down? No,
No.
right? It's like
No.
part of the beauty of a family business is that you're getting that from your family,
Hmm.
you know,
Hmm.
and you're able to
Absolutely.
spend that time with each other.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's cool.
And he would continue, like, I didn't work under my father. And I wonder if that's a
Okay.
little piece of the secret here too. Because
Okay.
sometimes that can be tough.
Yeah, right.
And I worked under the GM, but never worked under dad directly. I remember when I was a young girl, I'd go to job sites with him, walk around, totally confused. What's going on here? What are these machines blowing air everywhere? But over time, I would stop by the office, or when I was taking over the business, he would come by and he would come out with me and we'd walk the trucks. And he would point things out that he noticed that he would expect to be done around there. And it was about efficiencies, and like just the attention to detail was absurd.
Yeah.
The way we organize the tool room, the way the technician's tool bag should be, that the technician should never be lacking anything on the job. We want the best tools for them. And my dad always had the best tools and the best toys.
Hmm.
And he nothing around that place was cheap.
Yeah.
Nothing. And that was another big lesson, is invest in the equipment to do the work.
Hmm.
And that was lasting. And so those were the ways he would teach me, is stopping by, walking around with me, or going over to their house for a holiday. And I'd bring over my P&L and I'd be like, check this out, and
Yeah.
eventually got to the point they're like, this doesn't even make sense to us anymore. We don't even know how you're doing this.
You've
Like
way
it,
scaled beyond us, right?
yeah. Eventually I was, and then that's when the advice stopped, you know.
Hmm.
But it did stop. It was just not, it continued, but it was just not, it never leveled up.
Yeah.
But it was still the foundational things that sometimes as I grew, I needed to kind of bring myself back down and be like, oh man, I lost that big client. But I lost the Apple account for us back in, it must have been 2010. I don't know. I lost the whole fucking account and I was beside myself. And sure enough, didn't take care of the customer.
Ay, ay, ay.
Yeah. And we got it back 5 years later. And every time I failed, every time it just went back to a value he had taught me, a lesson he had learned. And it doesn't matter how big your customers are, from, Miss Jones, who owns a little home in San Bruno down the street, or, the main guy at Apple. It's all the same.
So in the back of my head, you mentioned at the top of the call, you're like, I was a tough kid.
Yeah.
Right. And then it seems at some point, when your uncle was kind of having this conversation with you, it's kind of like y'all were playing checkers of sorts and some
Uh-huh.
psychology going on. Um, that's really interesting. It seems like there's more at play there.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, do you what's your hunch that did
Hmm.
was that a conscious decision to try to get you involved?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. I remember my dad getting frustrated, like, oh, we're so sensitive. The two girls, they're so sensitive. They
Mhm.
don't, he's just a very direct guy. He's just like,
Mhm.
like, this sounds terrible nowadays, but he's like, hey, it looks like you're putting on some weight. Be like, just he was like, what? He just didn't get it.
That's my dad's the same way.
He didn't get it. And
Yeah.
so he would say things to us and we would just lose our shit over it. And that's a, extreme
Mhm.
example, but he's
Yeah.
like, why don't you just do this? Why don't you just do that? So I think he like figured out, like, okay, I can't be direct with these girls. And so I do think he did it. I don't know. I don't think, because I had come out of like a solid like 2 years of drugs and I was a missing person.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
My parents couldn't find me for a very long time. They found me, they did an intervention. I
Mm.
ran away, I escaped. It was terrible. Both became the best daughters ever. But I don't know if he thought I had it in me,
Ah, yeah. Okay.
you know? And
Well, I mean,
I'm
because
not sure.
it comes up frequently, right? Where we've, the parent built this business and they don't know if the kid's the right fit or not, right? But it seems like there was a belief. I mean, you're obviously a very strong, smart person, right? So
Right.
there's a belief in there that you are the right fit, but trying to figure out how to communicate in your communication style, you know?
Correct. Yeah, he believed in me for
Yeah.
sure. He wouldn't have said yes like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
So cool.
Yeah.
If you were, thinking about, another young lady, young dude that is on the verge of taking over their parents' business, what advice would you give them to kind of try to prepare mentally, emotionally for
Yeah.
that takeover?
Well, I back up a little bit. I used when I was more involved in my industry events, speaking, things like
Mhm.
that, I would have fathers come up to me, can you talk to my son?
Okay.
He doesn't get it. He's not understanding what I've done and what I've built for him. And you get it. Can you talk to him? So I spent a lot of time talking to second gen guys working for their dad,
Hmm.
not putting the effort in, or kind of like wanting to go do something else. I want to go do this. I want to go do that. And so I would have lunch with them. I would have, a call with them, and I just would explain my story, but also the untapped value and all the work our parents did, and how much sweat equity is in this thing. And you're just going to let it die on the vine? Like, go make it your own, And then I would have to talk to dad and say, you got to get the fuck out of the way. You
You
got to
said
meet
you
him
got to get the fuck
halfway.
out of the way to
Yeah.
you, so give
Like,
him space.
yep.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay.
Give him space, let him make his mistakes. They're going to be
Hmm.
expensive,
Hmm.
and I think because I was alone in my business, and I could make all the mistakes on my own, and I could pay for them, and I
Yeah,
could fix them.
yeah.
And that's why I did so well, because I didn't have
You didn't have
someone
a
there
choice.
I didn't have someone preventing my mistakes. And I think that's where the frustration builds with these generational companies.
Have you ever heard of the book Burn the Boats?
No.
I'm part of a group called Tribe. He spoke at it's kind of like an EO kind of group. He spoke at the yesterday. And it's kind of along those lines, like burn, you're invading Iceland or something like this. You burn the boats of the army and they're going to fight twice as hard because there is no escape, right?
There's no out.
This is the only choice. Your
There
your back's
there
against
is
the
no
wall.
plan
Yeah.
B. Yep.
Right.
Yep.
Whereas if you're kind of coddled, you're not coddled, that's not the right word, but if you have such a support system, you might not take it as seriously, right? So it
Yep.
sounds like that's some of the mentoring you're trying to do with some of those second gen
Yep.
individuals.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened with any of them, but that's usually my advice
Yeah.
around that. I need to get that second generation person to understand um, what the wealth looks like in the future, because
Hmm.
they don't a lot of time understand what it's like to
Oh.
be in charge of your own, income and your own wealth, and being able
Mhm.
to pay yourself whatever you want,
Yeah.
and that whole, I mean, who has that?
That's a
You
whole
you
nother
can't
discussion. We could talk about
you
that
can't
for 20 more days. Yeah.
I mean, the world is my oyster. I can do whatever I want. I could work as much as I want. I could do any role in the company I want. I can
Mhm.
do anything.
Yeah.
And so trying to get them to understand what that looks like, that they just need to work to get to that point, and I can show them like kind of what's on the horizon after that, what's
Mhm.
possible. Yes.
Stepping into leadership,
Uh-huh.
taking over from a parent or even a grandparent,
Mhm.
um, what advice would you give them to prepare mentally and emotionally?
Mhm.
I mean, I think you pretty much answered it. That's pretty spot on. Anything else?
Yeah. You can't prepare.
Through a deep end, throw you in the deep end.
If I knew how hard it was going to be, I don't know if I would have done it. Ignorance helps. Getting in there and going, the burnout phases, learning what burnout is, how to,
You're
control
also
it, how to,
saying that as a 41-year-old, right? You know, I
yeah.
mean, if you're 28,
What is burnout?
yeah, what are you talking about? You're trying to run through walls here. You're eager to go.
Yeah.
You want to prove yourself.
And I think that's what you need. You just need to give them runway. And if they're going to crash and burn, let them crash and burn. If they don't get back on, fine. Go
Mm.
to option B. But you got to let them try and go and give it all
It's
they
not like
got.
you're giving the entire keys, right? Like, I mean, give them the keys, but like just have some guardrails, have some monitoring.
Yeah. 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 Like if, even when I leave, one of my superpowers is going on vacations. And that's where where I learned I had clarity. I went on a 2-week trip for the first time and who knows how long. And I was struggling with the biggest problem ever. And I woke up in the middle of the night and the answer was there, I think on day 10. And I was like, okay, I need to take more time off. And I was so addicted to my BlackBerry back then.
Mm,
And like, I just had to stay engaged all the time. I'm
mm.
trying so hard to keep this thing afloat and it can't run without me. And then eventually you get to the point where you see it's doing harm. And I have no friends. And my friends don't like me anymore because I don't care about them, because I'm not focused on them and I can't make it to their events and I can't call them and see how their day's
Mhm.
going. And so my personal life goes to the side because all I have now is this. And even my sister, would give me a hard time. You just don't care about us. You're here, but you're not here. And uh, where am I going with this? It just, it's so consuming. Back to the vacations. So I realized I was like, okay, I'm going to die soon. And so if I would leave town, these are the guardrails. And I think that
Mhm.
I put them on my people and I think people need to put them on their kids. But I leave town and I've been doing this for at least 10, 15 years now. I get on a plane and I turn off my phone and they cannot contact me, but they can contact the person I'm with.
Interesting.
And if they can pick up the phone and call them for a serious injury, the burning building, you know, we've ran over a human being. Like, here's the list of things you can call me for. Otherwise, you are going to figure it out. And I believe you can make your best decisions. If you truly don't know what to do, call me,
Yeah.
call them, and I'll be with them.
Call them.
Yeah.
Your phone's
And
off.
that
I
is
love that.
how I trained the team to not need me over and over. And I would get back and they'd be so proud.
Yeah.
Here's how we solved this. And I did it. And I thought it was going to go to shit, but it worked. And then eventually they just loved it more and more. And so those are the guardrails you put in for your
Yeah.
kids.
Your kids and yourself. That, I mean,
Yeah.
that is a beautiful idea. Did you just come up with that essentially out of necessity? Yeah.
Out of necessity.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I knew I wasn't going to last much longer.
Too much. Yeah.
Yeah.
With
And we
something.
also have the element of a 24-hour business.
Oh, right.
And
I mean,
so it's 20,
emergencies. Hey, we need you now. Here's a big check. Okay. Well,
yeah,
let's,
gotta
let's,
go.
let's go. This is cash.
And yeah. And so those big jobs, for me to run them and, be out there and, just you don't sleep, you're just thinking of everything. And they last 2, 3 weeks sometimes, 7 days a week.
Yeah. Jackie, this has been the most phenomenal interview.
Oh,
You're
thank
so,
you.
you're so open and like and that's it's hard to kind of dig in and feel those experiences. Sometimes they hurt, right? Sometimes they're
Yeah.
awesome, but those
Yeah.
memories that you have with your uncle, your parents, I mean, those are phenomenal. I love that you're able to kind of voice those, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
and pull to them. So nice
Yep.
talking.
Thank you so much. Please
Yeah,
keep me up to date on everything you've got going. I'm excited to hear
absolutely.
more.
Will do.